They fired me to make room for the owner's son, a man who'd never worked an honest day in his life. They thought I'd go quietly, but I didn't retreat. I sold my 17% stake and watched $280 million evaporate, hour by hour. They'd forgotten what I knew. I wasn't just the COO, I was the foundation holding their house of cards together, and without me, well, gravity always wins. My name is Jenna Laird, and I've been invisible for exactly 14 years, 3 months, and 17 days. That's how long I'd been Chief Operating Officer at Midspire Financial Technologies, quietly keeping the machine running while everyone else took the credit. On the morning they fired me, they'd arranged a fruit tray in Conference Room B, the one with the broken air conditioning that nobody important ever used. "We wanted to show our appreciation," Marcus Whitfield said, straightening his Italian silk tie. "Our distinguished chairman of the board, a man who'd inherited his position the same way his son was about to inherit mine. Your contributions have been invaluable." I watched him struggle with the word, like it physically hurt to acknowledge my worth. Beside him, HR Director Patricia Chen, no relation. Despite the name, clicked her pen exactly 3 times. Hertel. She always did that when delivering bad news. "Which is why this transition is so difficult," Marcus continued. "But we feel it's time for fresh leadership, new perspectives. You understand?" Fresh leadership, I almost laughed. Liam Whitfield, 27 years old, whose LinkedIn profile listed entrepreneur and thought leader, but conveniently omitted his 2 failed startups, a meditation app for dogs, and a subscription service for artisanal ice cubes. This was their fresh perspective. "The severance package is generous," Patricia added, sliding a folder across the table. 3 months, full benefits, glowing recommendations. We've even included a non-compete waiver so you can pursue opportunities immediately. How thoughtful. They wanted me gone so fast they'd waive the very clause designed to protect them from people like me. People who knew where all the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking. I picked up a piece of cantaloupe from the fruit tray, perfectly cubed, probably arranged by Patricia's assistant at 6:30 this morning. Everything about this meeting was choreographed, from the apologetic tilt of Marcus's head to the sympathetic furrow in Patricia's brow. They'd probably rehearsed it yesterday, maybe even role-played to get the timing right. "When?" I asked. "Effective immediately," Patricia said. 3 more pen clicks. "We'll have security help you gather your things. Purely protocol. You understand? Nothing personal." Nothing personal. They were dismantling 14 years of my life and calling it protocol. I'd built their financial modeling systems from scratch, created the compliance frameworks that kept us out of regulatory hell, and personally managed relationships with 40% of our institutional investors. But sure, nothing personal. "Liam will be starting Monday," Marcus added, as if I'd asked. "We're confident the transition will be seamless." Seamless? I bit into the cantaloupe, letting the juice run down my chin just enough to make Patricia uncomfortable. In my desk drawer sat a Rolodex, yes, an actual Rolodex, because I'm analog like that, containing every crucial detail that made this company run. Not the stuff in our CRM system or the shared drives, the real intelligence. Which investor's wife had which food allergy? Which board member's assistant actually made the decisions? The personal cell numbers that only I had, built through years of trust. "Well," I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt, "I suppose I should get packing." They both relaxed visibly, probably congratulating themselves on how well this had gone. No tears, no shouting, no threats of lawsuits. Good old reliable Jenna, professional to the end. Security was already waiting outside Randy, who I'd helped get his daughter into a good prep school 2 years ago. He couldn't meet my eyes as he followed me to my office. I packed slowly, methodically. The industry awards went in one box, the framed photos in another, and there, in the bottom drawer where I'd kept it all these years, my leather-bound Rolodex. I slipped it into my purse while Randy pretended to check his phone. "I'm sorry about this, Ms. Laird," he whispered as we waited for the elevator. "Don't be," I said. "Sometimes the best thing that can happen is exactly what you don't see coming." The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside with my boxes. As we descended, I thought about all the things they didn't know, the shortcuts I'd built into our financial models that nobody else understood, the delicate balance of our compliance systems that required constant, invisible adjustments, The investors who only returned my calls, not because of my title, but because of the years of trust I'd cultivated. They thought they were replacing a COO. They were removing a foundation. And foundations, well, you don't realize how much you need them until the walls start cracking. The Rolodex sat on my kitchen counter like a loaded weapon. 3 days had passed since my fruit tray firing, and I'd spent them doing absolutely nothing productive. Yoga at 10:30, wine at 2, more wine at 4, but mostly, I stared at that leather-bound relic of analog power, running my fingers over the yellowed cards inside. Each card told a story. Harold Morrison, Clearwater Capital, allergic to shellfish. Daughter at Juilliard, secretly colorblind. Sarah Vance, Regulatory Compliance Board drinks. Only Earl Grey, never coffee, lost her first husband in a skiing accident. James Park, our biggest institutional investor, calls his mother every Sunday at 3. Donations to animal shelters under his wife's name, absolutely terrified of PowerPoint animations. These weren't just contacts. They were relationships I'd cultivated like a garden, with careful attention to the smallest details. The birthday cards I sent to their assistants, the restaurant recommendations that always worked out, the quarterly check-ins that weren't about business, but about their kids' soccer season or their spouse's promotion. My phone buzzed, another text from someone at Midspire, the 5th today. Hey Jenna, quick question. Do you remember the formula for the risk-adjusted returns in the Q3 model? Can't seem to find it anywhere. Thanks, Derek. I deleted it without responding. Derek had voted to replace me with Liam. He could figure out his own formulas now. The real entertainment started on day 4. My former assistant, Melody, called at 8:15 in the morning, trying to sound casual. Hi, Jenna. Hope you're enjoying your time off. Random question. Do you happen to remember the password for the investor relations shared folder? IT says you were the admin and... I don't work there anymore, Melody. I know. But Liam's first investor call is tomorrow and we can't access the templates. The templates? My templates? Built over years of trial and error, perfectly calibrated to hit every talking point while sounding conversational. The hidden sheets with anticipated questions and carefully crafted responses. The macros that auto-populated data while maintaining SEC compliance. I'm sure Liam will figure it out, I said. Fresh perspectives and all that. The silence on the other end was delicious. By the end of week 1, the texts had escalated to calls. Barry from accounting couldn't reconcile the intercompany transfers, something about a missing documentation trail only I knew. Karen from legal couldn't find the compliance checklist for their upcoming audit. David from IT discovered that several critical Excel files had circular reference errors that nobody could solve. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I organized my Rolodex alphabetically, made notes in the margins, and waited. The first email from an investor came on day 9. Jenna, heard you've moved on from Midspire. Coffee next week. I have some questions about their Q4 projections that don't quite add up. Harold Morrison. I smiled, remembering Harold's shellfish allergy and his daughter's recent violin recital at Carnegie Hall, but I didn't reply. Not yet. The beauty of institutional knowledge is that it's invisible until it's gone. Like air. You don't think about breathing until you can't. Every organization has its official processes, its documented procedures, its training manuals, but the real work happens in the spaces between the undocumented shortcuts, the relationships that bypass bureaucracy, the subtle adjustments that keep everything balanced. I'd been that invisible infrastructure for 14 years. The person who knew that our European transfers needed to be initiated by 2:45 Eastern to clear properly. Who remembered that our biggest client's CEO would only read reports printed in Calibri size 12, never Arial? Who could navigate the regulatory maze because I'd built relationships with the right people at the right agencies? My phone rang again, this time a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Laird. This is Jonathan Cross from the SEC. I'm trying to reach someone at Midspire about their upcoming filing, but I'm having trouble getting through to the right person. You always handled these matters so efficiently. The SEC, calling me directly because they didn't know who else to call. I let it go to voicemail. That night, I pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Not the passwords or formulas or contact information, they'd made their choice, and I wouldn't save them from it. Instead, I wrote down everything I'd built, everything they'd dismissed as easily replaceable, the invisible architecture of competence that they'd torn down for nepotism. By the time I finished, I'd filled 30 pages. 30 pages of institutional knowledge walking out the door in a cardboard box. And somewhere across town, Liam Whitfield was probably updating his LinkedIn profile to say, COO at Midspire Financial Technologies, blissfully unaware that he'd inherited a kingdom built on foundations he couldn't see and wouldn't understand until they crumbled beneath him. I poured myself another glass of wine and raised it to the Rolodex. To invisible women everywhere, I said to my empty kitchen, may they realize our worth exactly when it's too late. Liam Whitfield's reign began with a company-wide email sent at 11:47 on a Monday morning, Comic Sans font. I knew because Melody forwarded it to me with a single question mark in the subject line. Team Midspire, ready to disrupt the fintech space. Your new COO here, and I'm pumped to inject some fresh DNA into our corporate culture. First order of business. We're retiring that stuffy old motto, precision and financial innovation. Starting today, we're all about finance, but with vibes. Let's grab the future by the throat, LLW. Finance, but with vibes. I screenshot the email and saved it to a folder I'd labeled Evidence. Not for any particular purpose, just the satisfaction of documentation. The Instagram stories started the next day. Liam, recording himself walking through the offices, narrating like a discount David Attenborough. Here we see the accounting department in their natural habitat. Notice how they're all wearing gray. We're gonna fix that energy. Fam. By Wednesday, he'd redesigned the company logo, not with a design firm or brand consultants with Canva and an Instagram poll. The winning design looked like someone had thrown up a rainbow on our previously dignified navy and silver emblem. He unveiled it in another company-wide email, this one in papyrus font, with the subject line, Vibe check passed. Derek texted me a photo of the new business cards. Is this legal? He asked. I didn't respond, but I did notice the cards misspelled financial as finanatical though. Details. The kind of thing a COO should catch. The real entertainment began in week 2 when Liam discovered the compliance department, or rather, when he decided they were, quote, totally harshing our momentum. This insight came via a TikTok he posted from the executive conference room. Feet, spinning office chair, and a concerning amount of energy drink cans. Compliance is just another word for fear, he proclaimed to his phone camera. And fear is just excitement without breath. So basically, we're restructuring our whole approach to regulatory framework. Less rules, more vibes. The head of compliance, Margaret Wu, a woman who'd survived 3 recessions and 2 federal audits, resigned the next day. 40 years of experience, gone. Her replacement, Liam's fraternity brother, whose previous job experience included brand ambassador for a hard seltzer company. My phone became a confessional booth for Midspire employees. Screenshots flowed in like a digital river of dysfunction. Liam had moved the monthly board meeting to a bowling alley. Strategic strikes, am I right? He'd replaced the financial modeling software with something more intuitive he'd found on Product Hunt. He'd given everyone in sales permission to follow their truth when it came to pricing structures. But the masterpiece, the absolute pièce de résistance, came when he discovered the company's various financial accounts. Why do we have so many different buckets for money? He asked in a Slack message that immediately got screenshotted and sent to me by 4 different people. Seems inefficient. Moving everything to one main account for simplicity. #one team, one dream. I nearly choked on my afternoon wine. Different buckets for money. He meant the carefully structured accounts that separated operational funds from client holdings, that maintained compliance with federal regulations, that ensured we could pass audits without federal prison becoming a real possibility. Karen from legal called me, actually crying. Jenna, he's moving restricted funds. I tried to explain, but he said I was being super negative and that I should manifest better outcomes. What do I do? Document everything, I told her. Email chains, Slack messages, recorded meetings if your state allows it. Create a paper trail wider than the Grand Canyon. But what about the company? I looked at my Rolodex, thought about 14 years of 60-hour weeks, of missed family dinners, of building something meaningful only to be discarded for someone's nepotism project. What about it? I said. By week 3, Liam had discovered social media marketing, his strategy. Post everything, internal meetings, live streamed, salary negotiations, discussed in Instagram comments. He even posted a TikTok dance in the server room, which violated about 17 security protocols and featured him accidentally unplugging something important. The IT department sent me a fruit basket with a note. "We know you can't help us, but we needed someone to understand our pain." I arranged the fruit on my counter, next to my Rolodex, and took a photo. Evidence folder, subfolder, appreciation for the appreciated. The screenshot that made me laugh hardest came from the company Twitter account. Liam had apparently seized control and was live tweeting his thoughts on cryptocurrency, regulation, and why traditional finance was basically astrology for suits. Each tweet ended with #finance, but with vibes. One investor replied publicly, "Is this a joke?" Liam's response, "The only joke is taking yourself too seriously, my dude." The investor was Harold Morrison, Clearwater Capital, $2 billion under management, shellfish allergy, daughter at Juilliard. I pulled out his card from my Rolodex, ran my finger over the worn edges, and smiled. Harold didn't suffer fools. He certainly wouldn't suffer a fool who called him my dude on a public platform. My email pinged. Another message from a mid-spire investor. The third this week. They all had the same basic question: what was happening at the company, and where was the adult supervision? I archived them all without reading. Not my circus anymore. Though I had to admit, as circuses went, this one was spectacular. Liam Whitfield wasn't just driving the company off a cliff. He was live streaming the journey, adding a soundtrack, and turning it into a social media moment. Finance, but with vibes. I poured another glass of wine and opened my laptop. Time to update my LinkedIn. After all, when the inevitable collapse came, I'd need to be ready for the opportunities that followed. And they would follow. They always did when companies discovered the difference between a real COO and an Instagram influencer with a trust fund. But first, I saved another screenshot. Liam had just announced Casual Century every day was now Casual Friday. The man was a gift that kept on giving. The cracks started small, like hairline fractures in expensive china. First, the European transfers began failing. Those 2:45 Eastern deadlines I'd managed for years, Liam's team was initiating them whenever they remembered, usually around 4:30. Each missed deadline meant another day of float, another fee, another angry email from Frankfurt or London. Marcus Whitfield called me on a Tuesday at 9:07 in the morning. I recognized the number but let it ring through to voicemail. His message was carefully worded, professionally desperate. "Jenna, Marcus here. Hope you're well. Quick question about our European payment protocols. Having some minor hiccups. Would appreciate a brief call at your convenience. Happy to compensate your time as a consultant." Minor hiccups. I pulled up my banking app. 3 weeks of severance had cleared. Right on schedule. Generous, they'd called it. I wondered how generous it felt now. The second crack came through regulatory notices. Melody forwarded me a letter from the State Banking Commission, technically illegal, since I no longer work there. But loyalty dies hard. They'd failed to file quarterly compliance reports, the ones I'd automated so carefully that all someone had to do was press submit. Except the automation required specific login credentials that I'd documented in a file that Liam had probably deleted because it wasn't vibey enough. By week 4, the cracks had become chasms. My former colleagues had stopped texting requests and started sending prayers. The Slack screenshots painted a picture of beautiful chaos. Client funds temporarily misplaced. Investor reports showing impossible returns because someone had moved decimal points. The new compliance officer, the hard seltzer brand ambassador, had apparently approved a transaction structure that violated federal law because it felt right intuitively. Then came the email that made me sit up straight, not to me, forwarded by someone who thought I'd want to know. The quarterly investor update, sent directly from Liam's personal Gmail because he couldn't figure out the corporate communication system. But here's where it got interesting. He'd attached the wrong file. Instead of the sanitized investor deck, he'd attached the internal financial dashboard, the real one, with all the data, all the projections, all the sensitive information that should never, ever leave the building. And he'd sent it to everyone, every investor, every partner, every regulatory contact in our system. But wait, it got better. He'd shared it as a public Google Sheets link. Anyone with the URL could access it, edit it, download it, share it further. Within an hour, someone had posted it on a fintech Reddit forum. Within 2 hours, competitors were dissecting our client lists. Within 3 hours, Harold Morrison from Clearwater Capital had called an emergency board meeting. I refreshed the Google Sheets link obsessively, watching anonymous users flood in. Someone had changed the company name to Finance, but with Vibes, LLC. Another had replaced all the revenue projections with eggplant emojis. A third was methodically documenting every regulatory violation they could find, building a case in real time. My phone rang, Marcus again, then Patricia from HR, then 3 board members in quick succession. I didn't answer any of them, but I did notice they'd stopped leaving voicemails asking for quick questions. Now they were leaving messages about urgent situations and critical need for expertise. The Reddit thread exploded with comments, former employees chiming in with horror stories, competitors openly recruiting. One user claimed to be from the SEC and asked for additional documentation, which some helpful soul immediately provided. But my favorite part, Liam's response to the crisis. He went live on Instagram, sitting in what was clearly his apartment, not the office, wearing a Supreme hoodie and sipping what looked like a breakfast beer. So apparently sharing is not always caring, he laughed. But you know what? Transparency is key. We're not hiding anything at Midspire. Our numbers are your numbers. Our vision is your vision. That's the vibe. Baby. The vibe. Baby. I screenshot it from my evidence folder. Subfolder, admissions of guilt. Subfolder, posted while intoxicated. Karen from legal texted me. He just told the board this is a radical transparency initiative. Marcus looked like he was having a stroke. The general counsel quit on the spot. The general counsel, Richard Steinberg, 25 years with the company. The man who'd shepherded us through our initial public offering, who'd kept us clean through 3 administrations worth of changing regulations, gone. I pulled his card from my Rolodex. We'd worked together on countless contracts, shared hundreds of late nights making sure every detail was perfect. He'd sent flowers when my mother died. I'd helped his son get an internship at a rival firm. Real relationships, built on competence and mutual respect. All of it torched for a 27-year-old who thought compliance was just another word for fear. My laptop pinged with a news alert. Midspire Financial Technologies stock plunges 7% in after-hours trading following data breach. Data breach, that's what they were calling it. Not gross incompetence, not nepotism gone wild, not the predictable result of replacing expertise with vibes. A breach, as if someone had attacked them, rather than them shooting themselves in the foot with a bedazzled gun. The screenshots kept coming, panicked emails accidentally sent to all staff, clients demanding explanations, investors pulling funds, the hard seltzer compliance officer apparently trying to fix things by creating a TikTok explaining that money is just energy, and energy can't be destroyed, only transformed. I closed my laptop and looked at my Rolodex one more time. All those relationships, all that institutional knowledge, sitting on my kitchen counter while a company I'd helped build for 14 years dissolved into memes and regulatory violations. They'd wanted fresh perspectives, new energy, vibes. Well, they'd certainly gotten that. I poured a glass of wine, the good stuff this time, not the afternoon variety, and raised it to the empty kitchen. To transformation, I said, and then, because I couldn't resist finance, but with consequences. The email that lit the fuse arrived on a Thursday at 4:17 in the afternoon. I wasn't supposed to see it technically. I wasn't supposed to see any Midspire emails anymore. But when you've built relationships over 14 years, people remember you, especially when they're watching their company burn and need someone, anyone, to understand the magnitude of the disaster. Barry from accounting forwarded it with just one word, look. From Liam, Whitfield@gmail.com, to investorrelationsall@midspire.com, subject Q3. Update, big moves coming. Hey investment fam. Your boy Liam here with the hottest updates from Midspire HQ. Attached is our financial dashboard for Q3. Full transparency mode activated. Check out these sick metrics. Revenue up, down, all around. It's a journey, not a destination. Compliance. Who needs it? Not this guy. Vibes, immaculate. Also, here's the Google Sheets link for easier access bit. Lie-lie-lash-mid-spire vibes. Let's go. LWCEO, Chief Energy Officer. P.S. If anyone knows how to turn off the track changes thing in Excel, HMU, it's showing everyone all our edits, LOL. I stared at the screen. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Not only had he sent sensitive financial data from his personal Gmail security violation number 1, not only had he sent it to Investor Relations All, which included not just investors but vendors, partners, and somehow 3 journalists violation number 2, but he'd created a public Google Sheets link violation number infinity. I clicked the link. My jaw dropped. The spreadsheet was chaos incarnate. Multiple users were in the document simultaneously. Someone named Anonymous Hedge Fund was highlighting every problematic number in red. Another user, SC's Investigator Maybe, was adding comments to cells with questions like, "Is this legal?" and "Define creative accounting." But the best part. The version history. Every change Liam had made was visible. Every manipulation, every correction, every moment where he tried to make the numbers look better by simply changing them, like reality was negotiable, like math was just a vibe. I watched in real time as someone downloaded the entire dataset. The download counter at the top kept climbing 47, 48, 49. My phone buzzed. A text from Melody. "TV crews just showed up at the office. This is bad, right?" Before I could respond, another notification. Reuters. Breaking Mid-Spire Financial Technologies shares suspended pending investigation into potential securities violations. Securities violations. From a Google Sheets link, it was almost poetic. I pulled up LinkedIn, curious to see how Liam would spin this. His latest post. From an hour ago. Disruption isn't comfortable. Watching old-school finance minds freak out over our radical transparency. This is what revolution looks like. No gatekeepers. #open source, finance, #vibe shift. The comments section was a bloodbath. Former employees, current employees, investors, competitors. Everyone was there with receipts, screenshots of his previous posts, highlighting every promise he'd broken, every claim that aged like milk in the sun. One investor simply commented, "I want my money back." It had 300 likes. Then came the coup de grace. Someone in the Google Sheets had found the tab labeled Real Numbers versus Reported Numbers. Liam, in his infinite wisdom, had kept both versions in the same file, side by side, with helpful notes like, "This looks better," and "Investors will like this more." The financial Twitter sphere exploded. Screenshots everywhere, memes within minutes. Someone had already created a finance but with vibes parody account that was just posting Liam's actual quotes with no additional commentary needed. My phone rang. Harold Morrison. This time, I answered. "Jenna," his voice was ice. "I assume you've seen the situation." "I have. I need to ask you something directly. Did you know about any financial irregularities before you left?" I thought about my 14 years of perfect audits, my meticulous documentation, my obsessive attention to every decimal point. "Harold, the only irregularity I knew about was that they thought they could replace competence with confidence." He sighed. "We're calling an emergency board meeting. Marcus is trying to blame this on your departure, saying you left things in disarray." Of course he was. When in doubt, blame the woman who's not in the room. "Harold, I have a question for you. Do you remember what I told you 3 years ago when you asked why I didn't push for the CEO position?" A pause. "You said you preferred to be the person who made sure things actually worked. And what's happening now?" "Things are definitely not working." I smiled. "No, they're working exactly as designed. When you remove the foundation, the house falls. This isn't a bug. Harold, it's a feature." Another pause, then, quietly, "The board is going to need someone to fix this." The board had someone who prevented this. They traded her for vibes. "Jenna, I have to go. Harold, good luck with your meeting." I hung up and went back to the Google Sheets disaster. The user count was now over 200. Someone had started a betting pool in the comments about when the SEC would arrive. Another user was creating a real-time graph of the stock price collapse. Creative destruction, they called it in business school, but there was nothing creative about this. This was just destruction, pure and simple, broadcasting live to the entire financial world through an unsecured Google Sheets link. My wine glass was empty. I filled it again and made a note to buy more. Something told me I'd be needing it over the next few days as I watched the complete collapse of everything I'd built. But at least the vibes were immaculate. The quarterly earnings call was scheduled for 9:30 on a Tuesday morning. I knew because I'd scheduled these calls for 14 years, always at 9:30, always on Tuesday, always with the same careful preparation that made them boring in the best possible way. Boring meant stable, boring meant competent, boring meant investors kept their money where it was. Liam Whitfield was about to discover why boring mattered. Karen from legal texted me at 8:45. He just asked what an earnings call is. At 9:15, Barry from accounting. He can't find the investor deck. Also, what's a deck? At 9:25, Melody. Oh my God, he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt, on camera. I opened my laptop and logged into the public webcast. Perks of being a former shareholder, I still had access to watch the show. The waiting room screen displayed Midspire's logo, the garish rainbow version Liam had designed. Comic Sans font reminded investors that this was finance, but with vibes. 9:30 came and went. 9:35, 9:40. The comments section in the webcast began filling up. Is this thing on classic Midspire? Can't even start on time anymore. Where's Jenna Laird? Anyone else miss when this company was professional? At 9:47, the screen flickered to life. There was Liam, indeed wearing a Hawaiian shirt, sitting in what appeared to be the office game room. Yes, he'd converted conference room A into a game room. A foosball table was visible in the background. What's up, money people? He finger-gunned at the camera. Sorry for the delay. Couldn't figure out the whole screen share situation. Mercury's in retrograde, am I right? The comments section exploded. Beside him sat Patricia from HR, looking like she'd aged 10 years in 5 weeks, and the CFO, Douglas Park, whose expression suggested he was calculating exactly how many years until retirement. So, Liam continued, shuffling papers he clearly hadn't read. Quarterly stuff. Let's dive in, Doug. You want to take this? Douglas leaned toward his microphone. Thank you. Liam, if you'll direct your attention to slide. Oh, we don't have slides, Liam interrupted. Slides are so linear. We're going with more of a conversational vibe. Just friends talking about money, you know. The comment section was now moving too fast to read. I caught glimpses. Is this real? SEC watching this. Short the stock now. An investor unmuted themselves. Excuse me, Mr. Whitfield, could you please share the quarterly revenue figures? Liam laughed. Revenue. Doug, what's our revenue situation? Douglas's eye twitched. We're still calculating the final numbers due to some system transitions. System transitions. That was a kind way of saying our COO knew how everything worked and our new COO thinks Excel is a vibe crusher. Another investor. What about the compliance issue we read about in the Reuters article? Oh, that... Liam waved his hand dismissively. Total misunderstanding. We're actually pioneering a new approach to transparency. Open source finance. I call it, why hide numbers when we can all collaborate on them together? Dead silence. Even the comments stopped for a moment. Then Harold Morrison's voice, cutting like a blade. Mr. Whitfield, are you telling investors that you intentionally shared confidential financial data in an unsecured format? Hey, Harold. Can I call you Harry? Look, Harry, the old ways of doing things. My name is Harold, and I'd like Douglas to answer the question. But Douglas was no longer on screen. His chair